Chapter 28. The two sexiest parts of a woman's body are the spot on the side of the neck just below the ear, and the hollow just below and slightly inside the point of the hip bone. An hour after Sally arrived at my apartment, my nose was nestled against the first, and my hand was gently stroking the second. A spicy perfume mingled with the tang of the sweat that had activated the scent. We had started our exertions on the couch, moved to the counter, and wound up on the rug in front of the cold and empty fireplace. My knees were going to be swollen in the morning, but I didn't mind. My gaze lingered on Sally's left breast, and I cupped it gently in my hand. The fit was perfect, the small nipple still erect, nudging against my palm. My focus racked to the bottle she had dropped, which had rolled across the floor towards the kitchen. It was a good thing I hadn't stepped on it when we were over that way. I would have broken both our necks. "Why the champagne?" I asked. "Part of the celebration." "I don't think it can top the first part." "Of course not, but it's pretty good champagne." "I'm a beer man myself." "Okay, you caught me. The champagne is symbolic," she said. "I'm a beer man too." "All evidence to the contrary," I said, raising myself up on one elbow and surveying her naked body. I ran my hand from the flat of her belly down to the inside of her thigh. She purred and clamped my hand between her legs. "What are we celebrating?" I asked. "A major bust and my imminent promotion." "And this honor falls to me because—" "The celebration started off at a cop bar, but after all the action and tension, I was a little randy. I could only think of one way to work it off." "There must have been any number of coworkers present on the scene who would have been all too happy to scratch that particular itch." "I don't sleep with cops." "Ah," I said, "I don't know why not. In my limited experience, they're pretty good in the rack." "I'm not a representative sample." "Judging from the size and shape of most of the asses I see in uniform, I believe you. Tell me about this major bust." "The Melfi brothers, lock, stock, and wine barrel. The four of them are in custody, along with their managers and two accountants. The restaurants are padlocked, and the financial whizzes at the DA's office will start poring over the books first thing in the morning." "The charges?" "Multiple counts of possession, trafficking, distribution, and conspiracy. There will be more to come, and I bet the feds get in on the action with some RICO and tax charges." "Homicide?" "Not yet." I sighed and rolled off her. The darkness that loomed out the window was salted with light flurries of snow. Sally sensed my disappointment. "Zach, we just picked them up. They lawyered up right away. We don't have anything to tie them to Penworth. No forensics, nothing circumstantial, nada." "I know. I was just hoping." "What? That we'd come through the door with a warrant for possession and conspiracy and they'd all fall down sobbing and confess to murder?" "No, of course not." "These guys have been around the block. They're not going to roll over and play dead. They've always known this day could come, and they were ready." I know. It's just—" I was whining. "What?" "This poor schmuck lived a sad little life and died a lonely little death. No one gives a shit. Someone should have to answer for it." She raised herself up on her elbows and looked down at me, her breasts brushing against my ribs. "Exactly why do you care about this guy? You didn't even know him." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Jenkins filled me in on how you got involved in this thing. You're all hot for his roommate. It was your first date. You're sticking your nose in because you're trying to get into her pants. Hey, I don't need to go through all this bullshit just to get laid." "So what is it? You have real feelings for this girl?" "Isn't it a little early in our relationship for you to get jealous?" She laughed. "I'm the furthest thing from jealous. I'm just curious. I'll probably want to see more of you." "Probably?" I interjected. But I'm not about to make exclusive demands on your time, she continued. Not yet. Well, it doesn't matter. She's not somebody you'd have to worry about. Broke your heart, huh? She didn't exactly break my heart, but she ended up being pretty high maintenance. Speaking of which, do you want a cat? A cat? I have to get rid of her cat, or rather, Alex's cat. Why doesn't she get rid of it? She's moving to LA. So let her get rid of it before she goes. She's already gone. Look, it's stupid. Let's just say that my friend Leo spent years warning me about actresses, and I just had my first experience with one. Ah, yes. Ah. So if you weren't doing it for her, then why have you been on this thing like a dog with a bone? And don't give me any passion for justice bullshit. Lots of people have been asking me the same question, including myself, and so far I had managed to avoid it. Now, in the afterglow, in the small hours, tired, with this woman next to me who was more self, more contained than any I had been with for a long time, I knew it was important to answer honestly, for her and for me. Before we get into this, I need that beer. Want one? Sure, she said. I walked naked to the fridge while she watched with her hands clasped behind her head. She didn't pull the Afghan over her nakedness. Instead, she was completely at ease, and it permeated the room. I popped the tops off two red tail ales. Do you want a glass? I asked. It comes in a glass, she replied. Atta girl, I said. She smiled and took a long pull on the bottle. I sat next to her on the floor, both of us leaning back against the heavy antique ship's hatch that serves as my coffee table. Okay, maybe part of the reason I got involved was maybe to get into Cynthia's pants. Also, Jenkins pissed me right off. He does that to a lot of people, but he's a good cop. Be that as it may, we got into a dick swinging contest right from the start. And what? Once you started, you couldn't stop? No, but the more I learned about Alex, the more I felt like I knew him. He kept reminding me of someone, and I guess in the end, the person he reminded me of was me. Uh huh. It started to feel like, what if this happened to me? Who'd be around to care? Who'd make sure that any unanswered questions got answered? He didn't have anybody who cared about him? What about this chick Cynthia, the hottie? How do you know she was such a hottie? I just figured, with all the trouble you were going to, and obviously you're a man of discerning taste. Obviously. We clinked bottles. She had a good smile. No, I continued. Cynthia cared about him in her way, but she's not prepared or equipped to chase down the answers. And you are? Yes. Because you identify with him? Yes. No one would care if what happened to him happened to you? I don't know. There are a handful of people who care. My friend Leo, definitely. Maybe Nick, maybe Keneally. But I don't think anyone would go to that much trouble to find out the why of it. But there's also an underlying similarity between us. We both had a lot, and we both threw it away because it wasn't what we wanted. His family was in this weird cult. They had a whole plan for his life. When he didn't want anything to do with it anymore, they cut him off, and he ended up a waiter. My situation isn't that extreme, but it still made me feel for the guy. What exactly is your situation? Before I answer, I have a question of my own. Shoot, why the sudden interest in me? Sudden? Yeah. You think this is sudden? Yeah. It's not sudden. What do you mean? I thought you were interesting before I even met you. When I heard how you outmaneuvered Jenkins at the crime scene. How'd you hear about that? Cleary was spreading it around, busting Jenkins' balls. Huh, I said. Then, when I met you at the precinct, you turned out to be pretty cute. Interesting and cute is a good start. You weren't intimidated by the fact that I carry a gun, nor were you overly interested in it, either of which can be a real turnoff. Besides, in case you don't remember, I kissed you the second time we met. You kissed me to stop me from blowing your cover. I could have found other ways of getting you out of there, but I didn't. I kissed you, and I thought it was a pretty good kiss. So good it put me in the emergency room. That was an accident. And every other time I've seen you, you've been pretty hostile. Give me a break, Zach. You were screwing around with an investigation I've been busting my ass on for a long time. Now it's over, or my part is, anyway. Now I'm free to act on my interest without compromising my work or raising any official eyebrows. So my poking around was that bad. For my work? Yes. But for me personally, it's one of the things that attracted me to you. Why, if I was causing so much trouble? Because you give a shit and you're dogged. Passion and persistence, two very attractive qualities. Without those, I wouldn't have given you a second glance. I thought you said I was cute. You are, but let's face it, on paper, you don't have a hell of a lot to offer. On paper. Yeah. You don't think we checked you out when you popped up on the radar? We couldn't let you muck about without knowing who you were and where you were coming from. And so, on paper, you're a bit of an enigma and a bit of a loser. I laughed. Really? Really? Care to elaborate? You graduated close to the top of your class in law school, did a stint with legal aid, made your bones in trial work and appeals. Then, like many others, you got lured away by a high powered firm to handle tough litigation. You win a couple of big cases, you're on the partnership fast track. Then, suddenly and inexplicably, you drop out and surface in this new life. Did my family history pop up at all in this little investigation of yours? A little. You know my family is Orthodox. Eastern Orthodox or Jewish Orthodox? Jewish. When I walked away from that, it was a big, big disappointment to them. They didn't cut me off the way Alex was cut off, but they weren't at all happy when my faith lapsed, as they see it, or that I went into litigation instead of the family business, which is real estate. Yeah. A lot of real estate. Yeah. And you walked away because it's boring. And you walked away from Judaism because I don't know that I walked away from Judaism. I definitely walked away from Orthodoxy. I still light the Hanukkah candles, say the prayers sometimes, especially the Shehechianu. What's that? It's a blessing. You say it when you do something for the first time, thanking God for giving you life, sustaining you, and allowing you to live up to that moment. Sounds kind of nice. It is. It would be appropriate now, for instance. Really? Oh, yeah, really. I started to roll towards her for a kiss, but she pushed me away. Hold on. I want to hear more. So, this, saying the prayers, practicing in your own little way, that's not enough for your parents? No. For a lot of the Orthodox, you do it all or you're not a Jew. So you've got this big rift with your family, and yet now you're in the real estate business again, just like them. Not really. Yeah, I see what you mean. They're what I'd call real estate moguls, and you're what I'd call how do I put this delicately? A super. Funny. That's how my dad refers to me. The super. Well, that's gotta hurt. Yeah, it does. But I'm actually a little more than the super. I own the building. Really? She was bemused. Now that didn't show up. You would have had to really dig. I buried it a little. It's easier to deal with the other tenants if they think I'm just the super. Not that I'm unfair, But if I've got to be a hard ass about the rent or anything, or if God forbid I had to evict someone, it's easier. The corporation can be the bad guy. I can be the friendly neighborhood handyman. I took a swig. And how did you come to own this building? It had to cost, well, I couldn't even begin to guess what a place like this would cost. You couldn't have banked that much in the few years you were with the firm. I didn't. I got this place for a song. Lawyer tricks? You might say. Let me guess. You swindled some defenseless little old lady. Actually, the defenseless little old lady lives upstairs and she pays way below market value. So, how did this come about? I had a moment of clarity. There was a confluence of stars, the planets were aligned, and I rolled the dice. What the hell are you talking about? I don't know. I've never told this story before, not in a linear way. It might sound like I had a nervous breakdown. What happened? I was still at the firm, and as you noticed, I was on partnership track. I had everything I was supposed to have. I was a great litigator, a rising star in the practice. I had a hot shiksa girlfriend who wanted to get married. I was thinking about it. Then I won a big personal injury case. I had brought the client in myself, and I had a deal, fairly common, where in addition to my salary, I got 1/3 of any business that I generated. So this personal injury award was enormous. The firm was getting 1/3 of enormous, and I was getting 1/3 of that. As soon as I won the case, my girlfriend and I started looking at co ops. And was daddy helping you? Oh, no. My father's disillusionment with me was complete long before this. Sherry the Shiksa was a part of that, too. Anyway, the day finally comes when my check is cut, the largest sum of money I have ever had. Sherry and I go out to celebrate. She starts talking about this one place we liked, how it's perfect. It's appropriate for a partner in a top law firm. We can entertain there. The private schools for the kids are nearby. Sounds great, doesn't it? So what happened? I started to sweat. The room started to spin. I went to the men's room and threw up. The attendant was very kind, but he must have thought I was drunk. I thought I was having a heart attack. That night I didn't sleep. I just lay next to Sherry, fighting off panic. Morning finally came, and it was snowing like a bitch. Everything in the city was shut down, but I dragged my ass out of bed to get down to New York Supreme to answer a stupid little motion calendar. I could have made a call, had a junior associate do it, but part of the bullshit dues they have to pay. But I couldn't bear the thought of staying anywhere near the office, and I didn't want to be at home with Sherry. The walls were closing in. When I got to court, I answered the motion calendar, and then I don't know what that is, a motion calendar. It's not important. It's just when the parties in a lawsuit, or rather their lawyers, have to show up in court to submit papers on a motion. There are all kinds of things that go on prior to an actual trial. It's all boring paperwork and procedure. The point is, as I was leaving, walking through that big old stately lobby, getting ready to brave the blizzard again, I heard my name. I turned around, and there's this guy I knew from law school, and I haven't seen him in more than 7 years. We weren't best friends, but we used to hang out. We start talking. I tell him all about everything I'm doing, the cases I'm winning, the law I'm making, arguing and winning appeals. I'm very full of myself, puffing myself up so I feel better. But to my ears, I'm sounding pretty hollow. Then he starts telling me what he's up to. He's quit. He was at one of the big firms, but he hated it, and he quit to be a writer, which was what he always wanted to be in the first place. At first, I felt sorry for the guy. I mean, this schmuck threw it all away after all that hard work. But as we keep talking, I realize I'm still sick to my stomach. There's a fist grabbing my heart. And this guy, this poor loser I'm talking to, who threw it all away, he's happy. Finally, Our conversation winds down, and I ask him what he's doing there, sitting in the lobby of the courthouse. He tells me he's a referee in a mortgage foreclosure. He's waiting for the bank's attorney to show up so he can auction off a property. He tells me it's actually a sad story because it's this beautiful brownstone, and the old lady who owns it has gone non compos mentis, and she's what? Non compos mentis. It's Latin for not of sound mind. Sorry, lawyer habit. She's gotten old and she can't take care of the building anymore. Anyway, it's weird because the bank isn't holding that much paper on the building. The debt to equity ratio is really low, and someone could pick the building up for a song if they wanted to outbid the bank. How can you outbid a bank? Aren't they guaranteed to have more money than you? Yeah, but they're not going to bid any more on a property than the amount of paper they're carrying on it. Why not? Because they're not in the business of owning and managing real estate, and they don't want to be. It's just too much of a headache for them. They just want to get their money, fees, and expenses back. And so I'm sitting there listening to this story, and I realize that I've still got this check in my wallet. I've got this huge check, and I'm about to pay off my student loans and then use the rest of it to buy a life that I'm going to spend the rest of my life busting my ass to maintain. You mean an apartment? What? You said it would buy you a life. You meant an apartment. No, I mean a life. That money was going to buy me a whole life, a co-op apartment, a place in the partnership, status in the New York legal community, a wife. Then I realized that if I took the check out of my wallet and I subtracted the amount of money it would take to pay off all my student loans, I would have just enough money to buy the brownstone. I finished my beer. So I did it. You did it? Yep. Right then and there. The bank's attorney showed up. He bid the amount the bank was holding. I bid $1 more. And like that, I became a landlord. The next day I went into the firm and gave 3 months' notice. How did they respond? Not well. They thought I had lost my marbles. They told me to dictate status memos on all my active files as fast as possible so someone else could take them over. And when I was done with that, to clean out my desk. That sounds a little harsh. I think it rocked their world a little that the bright rising star was burning out without any warning. I think they were also worried about liability, having a crazy man handling important cases. Seriously? No, not seriously, but they're in the business of making money. I represented an investment that wasn't going to pay off, so there was no point in keeping me around. And how did the lovely Sherry respond? Again, not well. Not well? Yes. Suffice it to say, I noticed Sally's beer was empty. I held up my bottle. Do you want another? Sure, she said. She stood and walked over to my bookcase and perused my books. I went to the fridge to grab 2 more red tails, and as I returned to the bed, I admired her naked form. She didn't take up a lot of space, but the air she displaced quite nicely. So now what? So now what? Now that the investigation is over, what are you going to do? I don't know. I might keep poking around, but it doesn't look like I'll get anywhere. Everybody's in custody, and like you said, there are no forensics. If no one breaks, then these guys will probably get away with murder. Where are you going to poke? I've been trying to backtrack into whatever Alex was up to in the weeks before he got killed. Cynthia said he was really preoccupied, but when I try to reconstruct the last few weeks of his life, the only thing I turn up is renewed contact with a bunch of people from this cult that his family was mixed up with. What do you think that was about? I'm not sure, but I have a theory. Which is? Well, this cult, they're a pretty moralistic bunch. I talked to one of the former members earlier tonight, and she told me that they were very ascetic, celibate, and all that. So Alex was fired a couple of months ago, and that was the last straw in a string of bad luck he'd been having. Around then was when Cynthia says his behavior changed. Maybe he found out about the drugs. Maybe he wouldn't have anything to do with them, and that's why they fired him. Also, there was a thing with his unemployment being denied. Then he has an argument with the manager at Hentai. He appeals his unemployment claim, and it's approved. Maybe he used his knowledge of the drug operation to pressure them. Maybe he was blackmailing them. Why the renewed contact with the cult members? Maybe he was going through some moral crisis. The drugs, the far out sexual drug culture stuff that those restaurants represent. Maybe all that woke something up in him, some kind of flashback. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. It sounds pretty far fetched to me. I know, but his death was real, and the break in at Cynthia's apartment was real. The attack on me was real. What break in? You didn't know about that? No. A few weeks after Alex was murdered, his apartment was broken into a second time. His room was ransacked, but nothing was taken. I think someone was looking for something. So maybe he was blackmailing them. Maybe he'd taken something when he left the restaurant. That's what I'm thinking. And you don't think whoever broke in found it? We interrupted him in the middle of the burglary. If you found whatever that was, that might give the DA something to pressure someone with, some leverage to get someone to rat someone else out. I was at the apartment earlier today, or I guess now it was yesterday. I looked around a lot. Nothing jumped out at me. I'm going to go back there again today, but I can't think of anything more I can do anywhere else I can look. So why are you going back? I'm going to pick up the cat. Pick up the cat? Yeah. I might be tired of living alone. And that is the end of chapter 28. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. And when you do, make sure to ring the bell so that you get notifications of upcoming live streams and other events. And if you have a chance, head over to my website, MatthewArkin.com, subscribe to my newsletter, and you'll get articles that I write on the craft of writing, acting, and storytelling.